All right, betters, it is time. The Phoenix Lights.
Finally, this evening we go to Arizona to dwell briefly on the unknown.
The first report of a strange flying object came at about 8:20 that night from a former police officer in Paulden, Arizona. Over the next 40 minutes, people gave similar reports of an object along a 200-mile route south to Phoenix and Tucson.
Think about mass sightings. Like, what was your take on, like, say, the Phoenix Lights?
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Came right over the top, right down the street here.
Saw something more like this. Up close and personal, they say, and they're not alone.
An unidentified pilot flying near an airport in Arizona with his son when he spotted 6 lights in the night sky. Mystery unresolved.
Except I was the pilot.
No way.
Eventually, the Air National Guard claimed responsibility, stating that their pilots had been dropping flares.
Our unit was flying March 13th, 1997 as part of Operation Snowbird, and we were conducting night training.
At no point the lights disappear above the ridge of the mountain, and at no point the lights descend below the ridge of the mountain.
It was in this V pattern of the 5 lights, with the one light in the front and on the side, like a perfect V, coming at us.
His story hasn't changed.
It's not a story.
Listen, it was freaking huge. It was going really slow. It had these big lights in it. It was there. We saw it. There's no doubt in our minds whatsoever what we saw.
The time is about 10 o'clock, Sue?
Yes.
10 o'clock, March 13th, Thursday night.
Let's start with the basic facts of the Phoenix Lights. All right. The Phoenix Lights were a series of unidentified flying objects over the southwestern United States of Arizona and Nevada, covering roughly 300 miles from the Nevada border through Phoenix to the edge of Tucson. Would you agree with that, John?
Sounds right. From what I understand, even the edge of Nevada might not give it as much credit as how far it went. If you were to drive, I think it would be like a 450-mile drive. It would take like 7.5 hours. And I think the first sightings were from just outside of a city right next to Las Vegas called Henderson, Nevada.
Okay. Well, there you go. A little more context. Day and time. This took place back in the 90s. Yes, in the Flintstone days, y'all, for y'all young fellers out there. March 13th, 1997. Between the hours of roughly 7:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m., respectively, Mountain Time, the time of that
Arizona
area,
time,
where this took place. What is that accurate? What do you think, John? That seems accurate.
I think some of the reports get confusing because the first sightings happening in just outside of Las Vegas, were reported at a certain time, but I think it's easier just to look at it from Arizona time, Mountain Standard Time, which, yes, I believe that the first sightings was just around 7 p.m., and the sightings going over Phoenix were around 8 o'clock to 8:30.
Oh, okay. But aren't there sightings later on at 10-ish?
There was more sightings south of Phoenix around 10 o'clock, just after 10 o'clock.
So because originally we had broken this down like there was 2 events, but the more I looked into it, there kind of a lot of events spread throughout
the whole state.
The whole time, right? This particular time and zone and area, and I just figured it'd be best to do it that way because there is a lot of you could argue every witness's account is their own event. I wrote down a few things here that I find compelling, right, about the Phoenix Lights, and then you can help me add some more things in here. But to me, this is potentially the largest mass UFO sighting in U.S. history, potentially thousands of witnesses to this event. Some describe the UFO as a mile wide. The governor changing his story also is quite fascinating, right? Coming out sort of downplaying it, and then later on coming out with his own sighting and report of what he saw. Right, and he also saw a craft, so I find that very interesting.
And he went to humorous and controversial lengths not to stir the pot. He held a news conference after the Phoenix Lights to announce the mystery had been solved.
And now I'll ask Officer Stein and his colleagues to escort the accused into the room so that we may all look upon the guilty party. Don't get him too close to me, please.
In the alien costume, the governor's chief of staff.
Now, this just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious.
UFO enthusiasts were not amused, especially since the governor was believed to have seen nothing. But now he's coming out.
The growing hysteria intensified when the story broke nationally, and so I decided to lighten the mood of the state, and I called a press conference where I dressed up my chief of staff in a Martian outfit. It was meant to be a spoof, a good-natured spoof. That worked. We managed to lessen the sense of panic at the time. But I also upset quite a few of my constituents. Well, I'd like now to set the record straight. I never meant to ridicule anyone. My office did make inquiries as to the origin of the craft, but to this day they remain unanswered. I witnessed a massive delta-shaped craft that silently navigated over the Squaw Peak area in North Phoenix in the evening, and it was truly breathtaking. To my astonishment, it appeared to be a solid structure. It was huge. It had a very distinctive leading edge with huge embedded lights in it. And it was just traveling quietly, made no sound, through the Arizona night sky. I still don't know what it was. As a pilot and a former Air Force officer, I can definitively say that this craft did not resemble any man-made object that I'd ever seen.
One of the explanations for the Phoenix Lights is flares, and that caused thousands to think they saw a UFO in different shapes and sizes. That in and of itself is compelling enough for me that somehow flares would fool thousands of people, right? Potentially tens of thousands. So it's quite interesting to me. And look, there's a lot of numerous credible witnesses that make the story compelling. I'm not saying that they're what they think they saw is that, but the fact that there were a lot of credible people who saw something. What can't be denied is that something happened that night, right? Now, whatever it was, there's a lot of different explanations, but that is for certain something happened, and that is compelling. What else do you think?
I think just to tack onto that point, something happened. There was thousands, at least 1,000, but many people called. They called the news channels, they called the newspaper, they called the police. That people even called Luke Air Force Base, which is a very large Air Force base just outside of Phoenix. Thousands of people were making these reports. And what I find interesting is that not one person was ever interviewed by a government agency.
What do you mean by that? One of the people that called, you mean?
Yeah, well, given the large nature of this incident and it happening across 250 plus miles, you would think that some formal investigation should have taken place. At least I think that's what would be a natural progression, but nobody was ever interviewed outside of tabloids or news reports or morning news. So why wouldn't the military or the government take something like this seriously when you have credible witnesses and when you have not even just credible, but when you have thousands of reports of this coming in such a short amount of time?
Right. Anything else we're leaving off of what makes this case so compelling, right? That people keep reporting on it, making videos, doing that, right? Talking about it.
Well, one thing that I think makes it so compelling is that it is, like you said, arguably the largest sighting in U.S. history, and it's technically still unresolved. There's a lot of theories, and I think a lot of people still like to investigate this, but I don't think that there's one leading theory or explanation that has a true general consensus around it.